Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to walk through how you can model any precedent project or existing building in Rhino using just floor plans and elevations. I'll show you step-by-step how to import and scale drawings, set up guidelines, trace your plans, and then bring everything into 3D. I've broken this video into sections, so if you've already have your images ready, you can skip ahead to where you need. And the only thing that I ask is, if you find this video helpful, please consider subscribing. Without further ado, let's get started. Here is a quick overview of everything that we will cover in this model. We will start by finding the drawings, and for that we will go to good old Google, type in the project that I'm looking for, and say drawings in the keyword, in the key search here. My biggest recommendation here is you might come across architectural drawings that are done by another student, and I would encourage you to find something that either the architect has published or a reputable source, and that you know that these are, in fact, the drawings for that building. Now, often you're not going to find dimensions on these because they sometimes want to keep that guarded and secret because that's their own technique for how they maybe put something together. But try to find as much information as you can. And if you do use ArcDaily, it does require you to log in. However, there is a workaround for this. And if I click this, I'll right click and say save image. I can still save that image in my folder. So typically, yes, you need to create an account, but this is just a weird workaround that's a little annoying because I have to click each time and then go save image. So it might take a little bit to look around the internet to find those drawings. My recommendation is first look at the web, find reputable sources, and then once you've found that, click save, maybe do this workaround that I'm doing here in ArcDaily. Another thing that I'll mention is it'll also be helpful to have a couple reference images of what the project actually looks like in 3D, just so we can reference that in the future. So I'll go here and just save maybe one or two, maybe it's like an interior shot, and so I can get a sense for what the construction is like. You can also go to images and find sources that way as well. For your reference images, I would recommend making sure that they're not renderings of the project, but that they're real pictures and images of the built project. Sometimes these renderings are so deceiving that it's actually hard to know if it's real or fake. And so I would just recommend make sure that those are real images that you're using so that you're referencing the actual project itself. Once we're done with that, we'll have all those images saved. We'll go to our next chapter here, which is importing and scaling those images in Rhino. The first thing that we're going to do is come to the top here, and we're going to make sure that we are in, my mouse is all over the place. We're going to go to File, New Using a Template, and we're going to go to Large Objects, Feet, and then hit New Model. I'm going to go back to this project because I'll come back to my project here. It's very important that you are in the right scale, and a way to verify that is down below is feet. So just make sure that you have those units set before we import and scale these up, the floor plan drawings. So first we found our drawings, save those to our computer, and then we're going to import those into Rhino. We'll type in here and type in picture. And I'm going to select my ground floor plan here. And I'm going to click once, click twice. And I'm going to hit spacebar to repeat that command to go through this a bit more quickly. And I'm going to just bring in all the drawings that I have here. Sometimes you won't get every single elevation. And I'm noticing I'm missing one of the elevations here. And then you have to reference the actual floor plan and or pictures to make your best estimate of what that could look like. I'm going to go back and make sure that I have my other floor plan, my other elevation here. So I am missing that front elevation. I'll either have to look at existing images, but that's just part of the process of drawing from 2D to 3D is you just have to work. You have to start with what you have, and then from there start to piece things together. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is scale this 2D image so that it's at the right scale. Right now we brought it in at an arbitrary size, and we need to make it the same size as if it were built 1-to-1, meaning that if this is 1 foot wall, it should be 1 foot in modeling space in Rhino. Down here, it has a graphic scale, and oftentimes it's challenging to know if it is either feet or meters, and sometimes they don't have that labeled. Because this was in another country, I'm going to assume that this is meters. I did a quick conversion here, and 3 meters equals about 9.8 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to click that line once. Then I'm going to type in 9.84. And there is this right next to on your keyboard that represents feet. Once I have that dimension, you'll notice that it's going to snap to that dimension. What I like to do here is go shift, and that's going to lock it in so that we know that it's going to be straight. And I'm going to hit and click again. And then it will have it will keep the string going here, but I'm just going to press spacebar, and that will end the command. Sometimes what I see people doing is they go here, they click, they'll type in their dimension, and then they don't snap. And then you'll notice that then it's not perpendicular, it's not straight here. And so just using that shift, it's a little bit challenging to get used to at first, but once you start getting used to it, it'll almost be like muscle memory. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to select our image. I'm going to zoom in on this scale here and type in scale. We will click once at 0, and we're going to hit shift again and click at that 3 meter mark. And we know that we need that 3 feet to align with that 9 foot. So I'll hover over here, and if I have the smart track on, I'll hit space shift again so that I'm perpendicular and at this intersection, and I'll click again. Now you'll see that I've changed the size of my image to align with this line, which I know is that 3 meters. So we'll measure this, and we are in meters here. If I want to change the representation as well, I can also go foot architectural. Whoa, that made that really big. And it's going to say, it approximates because I have this rounding up. So 9 feet, 10 inches. And we can adjust the height and what this looks like actually in here itself. But the dimensioning is just a nice way to quickly make sure that have the right dimensions in our project. I'll come back because sometimes those scales, they might not be correct. So sometimes I'll come back and I'll measure other elements in the model to kind of verify if it's correct. If there's a dimension that if it's like the documentation, they say how thick the wall is, maybe you could use that as a indicator for the size here. So this says about like 1 foot, 6 inches. That's pretty thick for a wall of this cabin that's this small. I would expect, that they're probably using something similar to 2x4s, potentially because it's such a small project. But if you go into the actual project, they're using pretty big beams here, and it is in a cold climate. And so that's potentially why they have thicker walls. And indeed, when I zoom in, this is a thicker wall. It's not like a super thin kind of cabin wall. So they're building, that seems to be probably like with all the sheathing and all the structure, that's probably a good estimate. Seems reasonable. So sometimes you do have to scale the drawings just based off of your best guess. I think as long as you get close enough, that's completely fine, as long as it's not like too out of whack. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start to align and scale the rest of our drawings so that they're all in the same scale. We brought these in at different scales. The way that I'm going to do that, it might be different for your particular project that you're working on, but the principles will apply. So I'm going to start by creating guidelines. So if I come to my layers panel here on the right, I'm going to start and label my layers here. I forgot to add this into the sections, but we'll go over the layers. I'm going to rename this layer to dashed guidelines. And in this line type, we can change the line to dashed, and we'll hit apply. This will be really nice when we're doing an export and we might want these like to help with that, what that floor plan looks like. Nice to have those dashed lines. So we'll come and we'll zoom in, and we're going to start to define all the exterior walls here. I'll just draw one line, and I can use the scale and I'm going to do copy. So Control C, Control V, and then just align some of those exterior walls or kind of key moments in the project. So there's an exterior wall. And just to explain, what we're seeing here in the floor plan, this is basically, them just cutting the building at about 4 feet typically. Sometimes it changes depending on if they want it to look different, but let's just assume around 3 or 4 feet, they're cutting this, and whatever intersects with that cut, that's what we're seeing here on the wall. So you'll see that there's this little gap where they put the wood, and then there's another 2 walls. That's what we're seeing here in this floor plan. So depending on if you're modeling this project or something similar, it's good to start to investigate your floor plan, look at those elevations, look at the 3D to just get a sense for, what is actually happening in your project, and starting to read and investigate the floor plan and start to understand what's happening. At first, it might not make too much sense, but I think after you study it a little bit and you start to model the building itself, it will all start coming together. So we'll come, and I'm just copying, pasting the guidelines here. Once I have established the main guidelines for my project, again, this will be a nice thing to reference later on if ever we're going to export our floor plan. It'll be a nice additional visual graphic to have these guidelines, but it's also going to help us scale the rest of our drawings to make sure that they're aligned with the floor plan itself. Because every one of these plans doesn't have a graphic scale on it. And so what this means is that we're going to need to go back in here, and we want to make sure that our elevations are consistent with our floor plan. So even if there was a graphic scale, I would still rather just have all my drawings, they need to be the same size versus trying to adjust each one to the graphic scale, even if it did have it. So what I'll do is I'm going to align that outer wall. You'll notice that because this is the other elevation, actually, you know what? To reduce, I won't be able to, so I could align, no, I'll just keep on aligning this wall. I'm not going to get the alignment for this, because then I would have to flip this drawing, which is fine. Well, but we know that this is going to be the width of this here. So we'll align this outer wall. We'll type scale. Again, I already have the picture selected. I'll zoom in. I have shift on, and then I shift click, and then we're going to scale to that outer wall, and then it's going to be aligned. Now we'll drag this one down. We know that it's aligned. Later on, we can adjust, the placement of this, but this is looking good so far. The next one that we'll do is we'll do this one. Luckily, this one is aligned. So first I'll go and I'll click here, type scale. And we're going to do this for all the plans. So shift, click, and then scale like that. And you'll notice how we're starting to build up our drawings here. And then the last one, again, we know the outer limits here, and we'll drag this, scale. And I would verify that this loft here is indeed cut at the same outer lines, because it could be, there's a chance that if they cut it here, then it would be shorter, and then things would be out of whack. However, luckily we have the mezzanine area here that we can, the front porch here that we can reference. So I've scaled that, and it looks like those are going to be in line. So you'll notice that right now the window, and this is fine, we can rotate as we need, but you'll notice I'm seeing a window here where you'll have to imagine that if I were to construct this elevation, that's actually this window here, and you'll see the big window here. Let's actually make lines to show this in better detail. So I will show these lines, guidelines. So you'll see how where I'm cutting, let's go here, is where that window is. It roughly lines up. I'm not sure. Again, there has to be some interpretation here. I don't know why those should line up, but I guess they just don't. So if we zoom in a little bit, maybe if we had them like right here, they would line up. I guess they don't. But we do know that this lines up, the stairs line up, and so that's really the key elements there. And then later on, we can align that window and start to build this elevation out. Before we set up our elevations, we're going to just do some basic tracing of the floor plan and then go to bring this to 3D. So I'm going to come here and do another layer and we'll call this walls. I'm also going to turn my default and name that picture reference. That way I can easily turn off and on my picture reference. And if I hit this light bulb, I can also turn off my guidelines. What's nice about having those guidelines is it's going to snap and keep everything consistent. I think our guideline got off here a little bit, so I'll adjust this. And we are going to start modeling and tracing the floor plan. So we'll start tracing the floor plan. I'm going to click in the corner and I'm going to click again. When I have that rectangle, I can type in offset and I'm going to do 1.5. I think it was around that. So 1.5, hit enter, and then click inside. If I click outside, it's going to snap to the outside. I have to click inside. So I clicked offset, I typed in a dimension, and then I'm going to click on the inside. I now have the beginnings of my walls. You'll notice that I have them, that they're cut here, and these got a little bit off. I need to just move. There we go. I'm going to just draw this one more time because it got a little bit out of whack. So we'll come here. You notice how this is not snapping? Oh, it is. I need to go into my smart track here. Sorry, my O snap. And I'm going to type in intersection and then hit done. Those snaps are really important. They're going to really help you with your modeling. So now the intersection is turned on and I don't have a mouse today. I just have my trackpad. Now we'll do offset and we'll click inside and I'm going to just turn off everything so that you can see what's going on. So I've built my initial walls here and there's two ways that you can go about modeling this in 3D. I'm going to show you one way, which would be more of a fast, let's just say a faster, more maybe less detailed approach, and then a more one that is based off of the elevations where you can start to piece these things together. So first, before we get to that point, what we can do is we're going to actually call this one. So we'll call this one walls and we'll call this one, we can go in here and start drafting the lines and the windows as if we were just copying this floor plan with the geometry, but we're going to, we'll come back to that step. First, we're going to show the two different modeling techniques and then we'll go over tracing this. So if you want to, you can come here and just start tracing some of these elements. If you start tracing the kitchen elements, for instance, I would just make that a separate layer. So I'd come in here, rename, and then just have this one furniture. Now, because I modeled on the walls layer, I'll go to properties and I'll just select furniture. Now I know that that item is on furniture. I'll go back to my layers. And if I turn on and off furniture. So sorry about a little bit of the confusion here, but there's two separate things that we need to do. One is actually just recreate the floor plan using the lines in Rhino so that we have a nice reference floor plan where we can control those line weights. But we also need to 3D model our project. So for the purposes of this video, we'll first go ahead and model our 3D project, and then we can come back and do some fine tuning of tracing the rest of the elements as if we were doing the floor plan. The other thing is once we have the 3D model, we can do a section cut and basically replicate this floor plan model. But what I recommend is that you actually just draft this out by duplicating this method. So let's just quickly do a version of that where we're not drawing for 3D. So I'm gonna go to turn everything off here. Have this select, that means I'm drawing on this layer, and I'm going to select our initial walls here, Control C, Control V, take those and move it to the floor plan draft view. This way we're going to have a view that is, and let's make sure we have them on. So we have that rectangle on our walls and a rectangle on our reference. I won't do this whole thing right now, but just to show, so we'll have this selected. I would then go back and start just creating another line around each window. And then I would select each line here and then do Control T, and then I'm going to lock my picture reference and click drag up and type in join. So essentially what we're doing here is we're just drafting a 2D view that's replicating the floor plan. We're not going to use that for our 3D model, but for whatever floor plan you're working on, you can just get that initial step of just drafting the floor plan because it's a good reference later on in the process. So I'll go ahead and just complete that process. And you already noticed how I'm using the layers very strategically to make this modeling very easy. So if you find yourself and you're going through and, oh my gosh, I'm clicking this, I'm clicking that, it's probably that you're not organized in your layers and you're making life a lot harder on yourself. So I would just encourage you to use the lock and also hiding layers to make it really easy for you to model this geometry. You can see pretty quickly here, I modeled those. So and that was mostly because I was able to put those on layers and drive the process forward like that. So we'll do one last window here, Control T, click drag up, and then click drag up again, and we're going to do join. So if I turn everything off, you'll notice that I have the initial floor, the drafted floor plan. This will be a helpful reference point in the future. You can go ahead and draft other furniture elements. This looks like a wood stove back here. I'll actually just do a rectangle for that. If I click this arrow down here, I can do the 2 reference points and then just click, and then it looks like I still need to rotate this a little bit. Okay, so that's just showing that we can do an initial draft and floor plan draft. Let's put this here. We didn't do this wall, and then offset, and we'll have our drafted lines. Control C, Control V, and we're going to turn off our drafted lines for now. I'm going to make sure that this is on our walls layer, and I'll turn off that drafted view, and you'll notice so far, and we don't need the furniture for right now, we just have these initial rectangles drafted. Now I'm going to show 2 ways that we can bring this into 3D. So sorry, I always have to show 2 ways. So the first way is we're just going to go from the ground up, and the other way, which is probably the preferable way, is to do the elevations. But I want to show you how you could go about doing this in 2 ways, because depending on your project, it might be easier to do one or the other. So what we'll do is we'll start with our initial geometry. I'll select both lines, and I'm going to do extrude curve. I want to make sure that solid is on. And for this, I could just go pretty high. Now you'll notice that I don't know what height the building is or the elevations. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring back our reference images. We're going to unlock those. And we're going to start to set up our elevations to help us do that next layer view. So I'll click an elevation. I'm going to do Control C, Control V, and just drag this down. There's probably a better way to do this. Rotate. We're going to rotate this up, and you'll notice that for this view, you'll notice how this is not in the right orientation here. What we can do is we can actually rotate this, and then we're going to align it with our drawing. And that might not, I'll have to make sure that this actually aligns here. I didn't align it to the right. And I'm just going to do some subtle adjustment here. This is elevated, but we're going to treat the floor plan as if it were the floor plan. So here we're literally constructing what this project's going to be in 3D. So I'm going to do my other elevation here, and I'm going to double click to this side view, and again do, Control C, Control V. Drag this over, rotate, and then we're going to build this up on this side here. I'm going to go into perspective and just see if I did the right thing. I didn't do the right elevation though, so I need to actually select this elevation. This one's a little bit more straightforward because you can just come and rotate, and I don't need to change where it's aligned. It's just good to go where it is. And I'll actually use this one because did you notice how I'm just rotating it up? So it's staying where it needs to. I do need to change the elevation, although this could be I don't know, I'm going to go back and forth on this because ideally I would just keep the image. No, I want this to intersect with we want everything to start at that same level there. So we'll have this at the same level. So you see how if I had the other elevation, I could start to stand that up on the other side and I would have another reference. Additionally, if I had multiple stories, this is just kind of like a loft. I would also come in here and create a new layer and call that floor plan 2. And when I have my geometry selected, I'll take that and go to floor plan 2, get that aligned in the top view, and then, move it up, let's say 10 feet. There's additional about 4 feet. So I need to move that actually a little bit higher. So we'll move this up to maybe where that we think that loft is, which is, maybe there. I would have to look at pictures because I actually don't remember off the top of my head. For this one, it's not so important. It's important, but I'm not as concerned about it. Let's see in the picture here where that is. I think it's like right there. So you can see it's like just above that top window is where that wall is going to be. So I'll come back into the view and I know that it's just above the window. I don't have an elevation of that window at the moment, but if I go to my 3D view, I can see if this probably pretty much aligns top to top. So that way, let's go to this view. Let's go to the back view, set view, go back. It's going to be just above that line in this 3D. See, isn't that kind of cool how you can kind of just start to piece these things together? Okay, so that is the chapter of, I'm using my trackpad. We traced the floor plan. Now we're adding the elevations. We did that initial extrusion. I'm going to show 2 versions of creating and editing that geometry, and then we'll model the specific things, and then we'll be done. We're pretty close, actually, now that we have all of this referenced. For this, I'm tempted to make an additional picture reference that would have each elevation in here. I know that seems like a lot. I definitely know that I'm going to turn off my furniture view, but I'm going to come up here, create a layer, do elevation 1. We can just do elevation because I think that's fine. If I go here, I can then go to this modeled view. I might need to separate these 2 out on different views. So for now, I can also just type in hide. Not a good practice, but if you just need to do something quick, that I guess is an acceptable thing to do. Probably not. If I go into my set view, because it doesn't hide it all. So if we go back into front, we're going to do the quick way, and then we're going to do what I would consider the preferred way based on this model. You could do Control Shift, and if you're on a Mac, Command Shift, click drag down, and I'm only going to have these points selected, and I could drag the geometry down like that. Click Shift Hold, click the geometry, and click down about there. You'll notice it's taking the average, and so the lines here are not super clean, so I don't love that. We can see what that looks like in 3D. See how it shouldn't bulbous that crazy. So I'm not sure why I went that crazy. But you can see what this looks like in 3D is if I'm going to go Control Shift, I accidentally see that's why it's nice to have, I'm going to go back to have that locked. So I could Control Shift, move this down to my reference, but you can see it's starting to go a little crazy on me. So that would be kind of a very quick way, but you can see that then it bulbouses a little bit, and that might not be an issue, right? You just want a quick Control Shift, get this into place. The other thing that you can do is if I'm in the front view, let's ignore that I ever did that. That's just kind of a quick adjust the modeling technique. I can come here and we'll create a polyline, and I'm going to click here and then click here, and I'm going to do Control T, click drag up, and that's going to trim the geometry based on that line. I'll hit enter. You'll notice that it did make my walls open now. And so what you could do is you could go around and recreate the lines by Control Shifting the edges. Control Shift the edge. And you could go planar surface. That created a cap. I can select those 2 geometries. So this is just a surface that I created in this, and then hit join, and you have 1 geometry. You could also try something like wire cut. Sorry, I got to show 3 ways to do things because, again, depending on your circumstance, it might be different. So if I select this and I hit wire cut, select objects to cut, I select this and it didn't do it in the right direction. Let's move this in the front. I'm going to do that one more time. Oh, it doesn't want to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the circle for the wire cut. So we'll go join, wire cut, and now we can shift that. And that way we've kept the solid there and we have a solid. Now from here, so I just extruded this overall shape. Now from here, I can go and start building out each one of the items. So if I come here, I can create a rectangle as the window, and I can again hit wire cut. Now you could use trim, but the challenge with trim, this is getting in the way. See, sometimes you just want, so I already know. So I could use trim, Control T, and hit twice. It did create an indent on this other side. So let's try not having extending cutting lines and try this one more time. Control T, and someone's gonna have to tell me why it still does that. Oh, perfect, it didn't cut it. That's what I thought. All right. Then you'll notice though, when I cut this, again, depends on the context, I then have this open hole here, and then I have to go back and do an extra step. And so that's why if you don't want to do that extra step, you can just do wire cut, select your geometry, and then you can control what you're going to cut, and you'll just cut that geometry. So sometimes I like Control T because it's just really quick and I don't care that there's gaps there. Other times I do care and I don't want to mess with that. And we're done with that line. So, and you can continue that way through your project. So I'll come and I'll just keep, I'll go back to my reference lines, hit show to make sure. I feel like I lost an elevation. Did I delete it by accident? I don't know where that elevation went. I might have deleted it by accident, had it locked. See, that's why you don't want to do the hide and show thing. Don't do hide and show. Don't be like me. All right, so again, we'll come back onto this side, create a rectangle. Whoops, I'll go back into the elevation view. I'll create a rectangle and do the same thing. Wire cut, come into perspective, and I'll select that line. Whoa, so I don't even know where I drew that line, and I don't even know, see how I drew it like way over here? If you want to make sure that you're like where you're drawing that geometry in the 2D view, something that you can do is I can select the picture here and I can type auto C-plane and then, auto C-plane, do rectangle, draw a rectangle. Now when I draw that rectangle, fingers crossed, it should be, it's not on that elevation. I think, let's see, let's try this one more time. Auto C-plane is on. So if I have this picture selected, it should draw the line on there, but I think it's snapping to, now it's drawing on it. So that auto C-plane is going to whatever you're selecting, but I think what was happening was it was snapping to some other lines. So again, you can put things on different layers and lock them so it's not snapping to geometry that you don't like. And that simple step of being organized with your layers, I promise you, will just save you just hours and hours of headache. Notice how like I'm going to lock this now because I keep accidentally selecting it. And then, sorry, I'm just fixing this rectangle because I didn't draft it the right time. And then we're going to move this over just a little bit. Then we have our window. All right, so I'll select that geometry. I'm just going to hide this picture reference. Hide floor plan 2. We're going to do wire cut again. There we go. I might have to do some digging for this front one, or we'll just go and let's see if I can find, or we'll just estimate where that is. Nope, yeah, I can't find that. But what we can do is we know that the width, what the width is based off of the floor plan. So if I go to my picture reference, I'm going to hide my walls for now. I know that this is going to be my window here. I can just use that geometry. So I know that that's going to be the width of my window. And we even know the dimension of how inset it is. And we have a reference for how high it is because it's about the same height as this window. So we can figure out where that window is. And then the same thing goes for here. I'll Control C, Control V. I'll just drag this over. I'll select these. If I zoom in, and these are honestly just going to be, I could just do reference lines, but we're just drawing temporary geometry here. If I zoom in, I can select the curve point and then just move it like that. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do scale 1D I'll select the bottom here, select the top. I don't know what I did. And I'll resize geometry that way. So I'll have that line there. So now I just drew these as references. Now when I go into that view, so I'll come into, let's double click on the right view. Let's show our walls. I'll come here to go to shaded. And so I will create a rectangle. I'll hover. That will let me, and for now, I don't know the height, so I'm just going to click in a random spot because I can get that later. I also don't know the height of this window either, so we can get that later. I'll come into my 2D view. We know that it's about the height of that front window. So this is front, we want to go to back. So we know it's about the height. We'll click reference, dashed reference lines. Click once to scale the height there. Now I know, okay, I need to get that to the top of that point. There's probably a better way to do that. We'll draw one more reference line here so we know the top. That seems really high. I don't know what's going on with that. We have to check the height. I don't know what's going on. All right, so, and then we'll move this up to our reference line, and we're gonna move this up to our reference line. Doesn't that seem high? I guess it seems high. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. It seems like way too high. It's the size that it says it was. I don't know. Maybe once we start putting on the roof, it will start to look more normal. Yeah, I think once we get the roof. I am gonna go back to the drawings, or sorry, the pictures here. And there's actually two windows. Here, I'll just, looking at the perspective, there's actually two windows on this side, and I'm gonna have to estimate the bottom of it. I know that the door is gonna go to the bottom. For this one, it does align, but it's about halfway looking at the perspective. I'm referencing it's actually a little bit, it's not that big of a window. Once we have that size, just do Control C, Control V, and we'll move this one up here. Okay. Let's do our final items. So I'll select these lines and we're going to do wire cut, select objects, and we're going to do wire cut. Now you could do this wall by wall. Like you could also like draft the lines here and then use that to extrude and make your wall. I think that's fine. You could also make a more detailed model and just start with making studs and building up the sheathing. That's also an option. But for now, we're just doing this one simplified shape that really captures the idea of the project. I do like to keep my line work, and sometimes you can just put those on a separate layer. The other thing that I want to mention is sometimes you lose that line work, and what you can do is do dupe border. What that's going to do is I actually can just do it on a surface, so I have to Control Shift or Command Shift, then do dupe border. That's going to give you lines that you can then reference and use later on in the process. So far we've modeled most of our the windows here. I still need to model this one. So let's just quickly do that one. And ideally I would have done this. I would have done that cut all at the same time, but you know, you see how I'm now in the wrong view here. I need to select my object, move it to walls, and then I need to go back to layers and I need to have walls checked. And then we're going to do a similar thing, click here, and notice that I'm clicking outside the bounds. That's going to help make things align a little bit better and not make anything. It's going to make things cut accurately too. Okay, see how I just accidentally selected my image? I didn't want it. And now I also can't find my geometry. So let's try one more time. Oh, see, okay, if I hover, now I can get it clicked. Okay, now we'll do wire cut. Double click this top, select my object, and we're gonna cut through there. So notice how I did this all wrong. The line was not in the right plane. Again, I needed to select the auto C plane, but I think I just snapped to something else. So just keep in mind where that geometry is being drawn, because that can really messes me up. Maybe it doesn't mess you up, but it messes me up. And then we have our beautiful little, I don't even know what would they use? We need to find out what they use this space for. It doesn't seem fine. All right, let's model the roof. And for this, how should we model the roof? I could come in here and do a rectangle. I could just draft a rectangle. Oh, that's not going to be correct. But Whoops. So I could just like go and draft this rectangle. I would have to then rotate it, or I could come in here and I could just click a line and then I could draft this like so. And then I could use that to extrude. I'm not going to do this, but I want to just show it as a demonstration. Where did I go epically wrong? See how it snapped to something else? What I can do is in this view, I can do project to C plane, delete input object yes. That's going to snap it to that plane, to one plane. That's a very important command. So I could use this and we could extrude this curve, and that's how we could get our roof. And you'll notice if I don't have something aligned, I need to check. There's actually not that much of an overhang, but I can just do Control Shift this face and not extrude, but move it just like a little bit overlapping. And we would be looking pretty good. We would have a roof. I guess I'm going to just go with that technique. I was just going to say the other way that we could do that is, no, let's just do that. We're going to do it that way. Like you could use the geometry that you already have as a way to model, make sure that it's, very, very clean that way, but we'll just keep modeling it like this. So all I did was draw that in 2D, extrude it out, and then I can this a little bit out. So that is my roof according to this profile. There is a secondary roof, and this I will definitely model in 2D. I'll come into 2 dimensions, and we're going to go to the back view. We're actually almost done. This model is pretty quick. We can build this. And I do want to actually make a rectangle because I want to make sure that I have the right, so I'll zoom in. I want to have the right thickness, and we're going to scale 1D. Again, there's like so many ways to just do one thing. It's going to be a little bit different. And then rotate, select, move down, Control Shift, going to this, where it needs to go. So I've just drafted it. We'll go into perspective and we're going to extrude it and we're good to go. You'll see these little thingies here. I'm going to show you a little trick. So typically how someone might see, like how this doesn't align here. So I can always just come and Control Shift, select this, but you see how I selected some other random things? I can, if I click Control Shift up, it's going to have everything in view. Oh no, I have to have that selected. In that case, I would just come into the perspective and we're going to just simply go Control Shift this. See how I didn't select the surface. Control Shift, select the surface, come back up to the top view, make sure that our roof is aligned. Okay, I'm going to show you a little trick here with these things that's going to make it really quick. And typically what you would do is for this, so now we're going to walls, and now I'm going to create a new, first create a new layer. We're going to call this call it Trell. For trellis, I'm going to turn off the walls for now. Typically what you would do, or how someone might think about this, is they would draft, the square, and then they would take that curve and they would copy along a line and get that, and then extrude all those curves. For this, what I want to do is I want to first create the geometry and then I'm going to cut it. And that's just going to save a step in terms of needing to create the curves, then the geometry, then cut. This will just be like create geometry, copy across, then cut. So I'll create one curve and we're going to come into our 2D view, extrude kind of high up, higher than we need to, because again, we're going to come back and extrude this geometry. Once I have that geometry in place, I'm going to select the geometry. Wait, I forgot a step. I need to create a curve that we're going to copy this along. So nice that I have my grids, and that's going to, again, just keep things consistent. So it'll keep things nice and organized. So I have my copy along. I'm going to select my geometry, and down in this, we'll have this little arrow. And if you hover, it will give you different things that it says. This says array along a curve. This says array along curve on surface. This is what we want, array along curve. Select path curve, and then number of items. We could also do distance. Let's start items. I did not do the right thing. So select my geometry, array curve. Let's try distance, I guess. I'm gonna get rid of the reference because I don't know what's going on. Okay, we're gonna try this one more time. Array curve. Okay, select objects to array, spacebar, select path curve. Okay, I went terribly wrong. I was wondering what was happening. Okay, I see how this curve just did not align to the bottom, and I have auto C-plane on. I can go project to C-plane. I was wondering what was going on. I was like, what the heck am I doing? Looks like I seem to do that a lot. Again, it's snapping to different things. So a fail safe is just project to C-plane. Now, let's try this one more time. Select objects to array. We'll press enter, select path curve. We'll select our curve. It's going to preview that item. So I'm going to bring back our grid here. And I'm going to just test how many items we would need. So maybe 50. Oh, that was not right. Try this one more time. I thought we could select objects. I thought you could preview without the number. I'm going to go into the top view. And now we're going to look at our things. Let's try distance 1.8, 1.9. I went the wrong direction. Let's do 1.5. 1.5 it is. Now press done. And then we have our trellisy thing. You'll notice how, again, I don't have this size yet because this goes down. So if I have our walls, I didn't make a roof layer either. So let's make a roof layer, select our roofs, move them to roof, and then we'll go back to our trellis. And I didn't do it high enough here, which is fine. Well, which is annoying actually. So I'm gonna hide all the walls here. That is annoying that I didn't make them initially high enough. So let's try the easiest way. I'm going to Control Shift. I have all these selected caps. Notice if I had a bunch of layers turned on, I wouldn't be able to do this. So even this dashed line, I can turn those off for now. We're gonna move that up. See how I had something else selected? I'm gonna hide our roof layer. Now I make sure, wow, I don't have anything selected but that trellis. Control Shift, drag down because I still had that selected. We're gonna move that up, way up this time. We're gonna just have our walls. See, isn't that nice? Just, you have to have these layers to really make this possible. What we're gonna do is we're going to Control Shift or Command Shift, and that's going to get that edge. Actually, we're gonna type in dupe edge. Dupe edge, and that can produce a line for us. I'm noticing that it's not going to be long enough, so I'm curious if scale 1D would work in this case. So if I select this, is it going to hold? It holds it. So there's also like extend line. You could do that too. Now we have our line here. Again, we remembered that if we just do Control T, which I'm going to do in this case because it's fine. Let's go in this back view. Control T, beautiful. So I don't really care that, who cares if I have a roof on this, if I zoom in that this is not open. Additionally, this is again why context matters. If I select all these and just hit cap, boom, they are gonna be closed. Yay. So there we go. We have our walls. We have our trellis. We need our floor, and then I think we're basically done. I guess we could make a door and a window. It's the same principle though. We're going to be doing curve and then extruding it. So I think I'm actually going to skip that because I'll just do it real quick. Like I can just do Control Shift, do border. Now I have this curve. I can do planar surface, and I'm going to create a layer. I ended up doing it anyways, called Windows. And we're going to go to the object. Go to Windows, select, I didn't move it to the right, it's back. Oftentimes there is if we looked at the pictures, there's going to be a frame around the window. And so an easy way to build that out again is now that you have that curve, we can just do offset, and we're just gonna do like 2 inches or something subtle. I offset this to the outside, but I could also just do the inside. And we could, just do something like that, but that's not exactly accurate. So let's offset into the inside, select that geometry, extrude it, one, and then we've created a little frame, and I can select that extrusion and just like move it out a little bit if that's how it was built. And that just helps it give it some definition. If I look at my project, there are like these shiplap items. And so if I want to give my model more detail, I could come back in here, and this is a pretty simple thing to do. It's like this board and batten, actually, what it looks like. So there's just these like little things. This can really help a model shine and make it look great if you just do these like little board and batten pieces. So I'll come here and we'll just create like a little board and batten. And guess what? It doesn't take that much time. I create a curve, I'm going to extrude that, and we're going to array. We'll do 15 items. Click once. Oh, I might need more than those. See how I didn't get enough at first? I can look at my reference image. And again, this would be on my separate layer. And I can even count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's actually about 18. So we'll type in 18. While I'm modeling these two, I want them to be on my own layer, because now I have to go back. Again, now I'm diverging a little bit here, so bear with me. So I'm going to select my board and batten. These are just additional details that you could do. You see how now it's like kind of annoying to select these items? I'm going to come in here and we'll do this batten layer, get them on the batten, Control Shift, move those way up. Now those might be over exaggerated, but actually not really. I can always change how those look. And then I'm just gonna use Control Shift and then come in here, turn off my wall, and do Command T if you're on Mac, Control T if you're on. Nope, that didn't work. So I guess I have to have the wall on. Control Shift, Control T. We'll just do it with it's not wanting to do that in perspective. So I'm going to jump back into the right view, and we're going to just do that. Okay, it does not want to trim these. I guess, why can't I click it? There we go. I don't know why that wasn't working. Don't ask me. Just make sure you don't click the wrong thing there. And then we have some additional detail. This will really help, especially like with rendering. So if I go to rendered view, you'll notice how this will just make it a lot more realistic. I think I made them too skinny. We could use something called blocks to make that easy to adjust, but for now we don't need to worry about that. And we're going to go back into our 2D view. And then again, I'll probably just turn off walls and we'll trim these board and battens. There we go. Again, just trying to add additional layers of detail will really help when you're making that rendering. It'll just have these like subtle shadows, which will just make your model look really nice. Okay, now we're going to do the floors and then probably just call it good after that. Once we get the floors done, I'm going to come in and create a new layer. You're seeing a pattern here. It's just like do new thing. I'm going to floors 1 first. I'm going to bring back our picture reference. And well, for this, we'll just draw a rectangle and see how I got my dashed lines. Like I want to keep that consistent. So we'll create our rectangle here and I'm going to type in planar surface. I didn't do the right one. Let me just try this one more time. See, if things get wonky, just turn everything off except for dashed lines. And we'll try selecting it now. No, it was being weird. Now we'll just do planar surface. I actually didn't have to do planar surface. I just realized, oh, that was what was happening. Okay, we're going to do, since I've done this so many times now, this is so embarrassing. Okay, I'm going to go back up to 2D view. We're going to have ortho on, and let's see if that's going to help us. And we're going to have the grid lines. We'll bring those back. See how it's snapping to, maybe if I start here and then it's snapping up. Let's try auto C-plane. So I'll select, we're going to turn off the elevate. See, I knew there was going to be a time where I needed to turn off the elevations. Select this. Now we have auto C-plane on. We're going to try the rectangle again. I don't know why I'm having issues with that today. Now we're good to go. We drew the rectangle. We're just going to extrude that. And let's just make that 1 foot. And then we'll go and bring our walls back, bring the wall, the trellis and the roof. And this thing is starting to come together. We could still keep building out that trellis and the wall and the windows. I can change this material to more of a transparent material. If I go by the layer, I can come here and go to the material. You'll see here on Windows, I can click this here, and then that will change everything on the window. So I'll come and I guess we'll just do glass. A lot of times I don't like to use the default glass. I'll just use my own thing, but for now we'll just use that. That's fine. So you'll notice how I can just quickly change all the materials on that layer. Again, just another reason why it's great to have your own materials. This is kind of like a brown-ish texture here. So maybe you come in and just do like a light brown, something subtle. And when you apply it, you can also do some like transparency there too. And you can bring in the reference image. I'm actually going to do that real quick to get some of the, just like directionally. Ooh, don't do that. Whatever I just did. But we'll do we'll get a screenshot of, again, you don't want to overdo the colors, but maybe if you just get like a reference, we can get the paint color dropper and just get kind of like something close. And we'll do the same for the battens. So we'll just come in here. So this is the material section, I guess, that we're getting into, the batten, and we'll do similar material. We'll just do that paint color. I could give it like a slightly different, let's just change it like a little bit. And that again, you see how like the lines they just help. I can do select curve and I can hide the curves if you don't want those curves. But anyways, just kind of like a subtle technique to change the colors. The roof material is basically just like a white. So we'll go to the roof and we'll also do a new color and we'll do paint. And it really is kind of a white, but we'll do like a whitish gray, I guess. Light gray. It's actually pretty similar. There's a lot of snow on this project. And then I'll do Control Shift, do border. Let's make a window. Planar surface, planar. Why it didn't create there we go. I think it was just like glitching out on me. First floor, go to the layer here. And now we just go to window and you see how it automatically adjusts it. There isn't really much of a frame for this project. So it's pretty seamless. There is like a slight little thing on the bottom, but it's actually there's not much detail there. So I might just leave it like that. This thing is up on stilts. So we could, if we go back to our image, we'll do some final adjustments here and then just call it good. So if we look at our elevation, it is elevating. There are stairs coming down. So we could model those stairs, or what I'm going to do is just model some tracks below. So it kind of sits on these like ski things so that they can get this and they can move it on a truck really easily. But we'll just create some skis just to kind of give it some elevation. And then let's see, what else could we add? Oh, the board and the batten for the rest of the project. There's small things like there's the beams. So we could add the beams for fun. That would be pretty easy to model. The beams actually go through the whole project. So for that, again, I would just go into this top view and we could just do this with a rectangle. So I don't have the sizing of that beam, but I'm just literally just eyeballing it. Don't tell anyone. We'll go really long here, select this, rotate it, select this top curve here, select this down here, and then we're going to come through. I'm looking at the reference image. This looks a tad bit wide. I also didn't rotate it correctly, so we're going to rotate it. All right, I'm starting to get loopy. I've been talking into this thing for so long. Snap it to there. I'm looking at this and it's looking like a tad bit wide. That's fine. I'll go scale 1D, select, and then we'll just move this in just like a tiny bit. Again, instead of, extruding this and then or having a bunch of curves, all you need to do is just extrude this once. And we'll do 2 inches. We'll move this piece in. It comes in a little bit, and then we'll just array. This I'll use some just like, it's probably like 4 feet, right? It's probably every 4 feet. So I'll type in 4 feet. It snaps to 4 feet. And then any extra ones, I can just turn off the layers that I don't need. Yeah, 4 feet was pretty close. Spot on, 4 feet. There we go. All right. So we created our things. And do they come out like that No, they don't come out like that. So again, we can just go into our 2D view and we are going to Control T, click drag, click drag. We're good to go. That's just the line work. I can just delete that line work. And then the same here, just create a polyline, and I'm going to Shift T because I want this to be, I don't want it coming through. Like I don't want any confusion. So I'm going to set this back a little bit, the trim line, see how weird that is. I also have auto C plane on, so that can sometimes trip you up. I'm going to turn that off. I need a whole separate video for that. All right. I'm just going to draw this line out in space, then move it over. Okay. I was having just trouble drawing line. I don't know what was going on. Line that up, Control T, trim that. I'm going to get the rest of the battens on there for fun. I could do a array along the curve. Well, I didn't draw my door either. What is that front door? It's like a normal sliding door and it has frame in there. So that I can draw pretty easily if I just Control Shift, do border. It didn't get that right. So I'm just going to Control Shift or Command Shift and then use that to extrude. That will give me this different geometry I can use. And I'll just extrude that like 1 inch and we'll kind of create just like a fake sliding door situation. All right, rock and roll. Once I have those battens, so I'll turn everything off, go to the batten. Looks like I can just use, or at least I can go Control C, Control V, turn on the walls again and just move those to here. It's good enough to me. And then I can, if I do border, should give me, I just need to do the face, do border. Now I have that line. I can do Control T and then just trim these battens really quick. I'm going to inset this window too. Make sure that my other windows are inset. Yep, my other windows are inset. So I just need to see how if I extrude this, then I have to change to the right layer. If I just quickly select that layer, select the curve, then extrude, I'm already on the right layer here. So I can just move this back and we're good to go. Control Shift, Control V, sorry, Control C, Control V, and that is good to go. Then we just need our battens on the front. Do I want to even model them? Do I even want to model them? I don't want to model them. I'm not going to model them, but you know how to. Then we're going to turn everything on and this project is starting to come together. Something as weird is happening with, we didn't make this wood too. This is just the floor, right? What layer did I, oh, floor first. Similar color. And the battens need to change too. Sorry, the trellis. Pretty simple and boring with the colors there, but that's fine. You notice how like this window is not great because it's just picking up on the color in the back. So you could go windowless is an option because it's not like doing the reflection right. You can also change like the sun settings and that might help as well, but you don't always have to turn on that glazing. I am gonna go in here and we can make some additional adjustments. And I can also come to the sun and we can adjust the sun. That can sometimes help. And in this case, it's not helping. So for this picture or this screenshot, I'm actually, it might look okay in other views, but I would want to go back and adjust those glass settings because I don't like how that's working out. It just doesn't look good. So I'm going to actually just come up here for now and we'll have to do that another day. And we're going to just turn off that glazing altogether so we can see. Another thing that I can do is I can go new material. I'm going to go custom, and in custom, I can give it a slight blue hue as in the sky. I could also bring in the sky texture, and then we're going to boost up our transparency a lot and press apply. And that gives it like a slight reflectivity there. So, and then you can come in and maybe you give it some reflection, maybe you give it some gloss, and you can start to just play around with some of those settings. I'm going to turn off the sun because that looks terrible. I don't love the board and battens, but I think it provides a nice, just like quick layer of detail. And for the rendering, I'm just going to, I like creating dirt. So I'm going to come here. Do we have auto C plane on? Okay, that makes sure that I'm going to model this on the right plane. I don't know. Something weird is happening with my settings. I don't know what's going on. So I'm just going to draw some dirt. I think it's my I need to reset my auto seaplane is weird. And what you can do for the earth is I can like select just this point here and then just like move it down maybe a little bit to have just some like subtle topography change. And this is a weird, we'll just move this to furniture view, I guess. All right, then we got some floor plan. It's just good to have a plane that you can use. It'll help with like the shadows and things like that. Then for this quick perspective, we'll come in here and we'll take very simple screenshot. I'm gonna move this layer back because I want to get more context, and we'll take a screenshot. See how there's curves there? I can do select curve and then hide. And then I like to have more space in the front of my building than in the back. So I'll kind of just place it like right there. And now my building's floating. So we're going to bring this up and just do a screenshot to end it. That's about it. Thank you for joining. I know this was a long tutorial, but I hope that it was helpful. Have a good day.